In today's video, I'll be addressing the graduate unemployment crisis in South Africa. I'll be reacting to Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi's interview on ENCA. I think he made some valid points. Before I proceed to play this video and add my thoughts on what I think the biggest problem lies in our choices even before we go to university, because the cause of the graduate unemployment crisis that we see today does not start at university. It begins with the choices that we make while we're still at high school, deciding what we want to study. I think that's very important that we note that. I see a lot of young people that are very impatient. We choose to go to university at all costs without weighing our options and seeing what we can do. I think there's a culture of impatience among young people. FOMO, fear of missing out. We think that when our friends have passed well, their matric, and they decide to go to university, and we're going to be left out. But unfortunately, that is not how life works. We are built differently as people, and we will not find ourselves, we won't find what we want to do at exactly the same time. Some people are blessed with that, they get great results and they go straight to university. I think that it's important for you as a young person not to put yourself under pressure, maybe because you did not get the results that you had aimed for in high school. I think that if we minimize the mistakes that we make in terms of choosing our careers correctly from high school, we would minimize this graduate unemployment crisis. A lot of students feel left out when their peers go to university, but I think it's important for you to be sure what you want to study before you progress and decide to go to university. I think it's important that you make sure that you study what you want to study, because what I've seen is students get desperate and they end up picking any and every course or any qualification. As long as I am seen to be at university, and the next process is obviously going to help you, and you'll get accepted to university and you study something that is oversaturated. That for me is the biggest mistake. I think it's important to spend time, right? If you did not get the results that you want for the course that you want to study, upgrade. There's nothing wrong with upgrading your results until you qualify for a particular course, because I think that's the foundation to solving the graduate unemployment crisis. We have a lot of graduates that are unemployed, but what did they study? What is it that they studied at university? And the mistake that I've seen personally is we choose the easiest course. Obviously, everyone is going to want to study that particular course. Everyone will want to study, and I'm not, coming down hard on these qualifications because they have an important role. But if 10,000 students are studying human resource management or public management and governance or public relations, whatever the case might be, if there's a lot of you that are studying the same course, there's going to be a lot of competition. And ultimately, you'll struggle to get a job. But, let's listen to what Advocate Ngcukaitobi has to say, and then, I'll add my thoughts as and when we continue.
Getting results at university is just the beginning. In order to secure a job, you need to be able to market yourself. Unfortunately, a number of graduates don't know how to do this. This is just one of the problems identified by Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, who is currently the Council Chair at Walter Sisulu University. He joins me now to unpack this and other issues facing graduates. Advocate, thank you for joining us at ENCA. We talk about Walter Sisulu University, and we're talking of a university that has really produced some great minds. We talk of, for example, the likes of the Deputy Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, just to mention a few, and the former SAA CEO, but the trouble now comes at modern day, where we find out that it's difficult to get the graduates to be placed in employment. Maybe detail some of the challenges that we're currently facing at Walter Sisulu University.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to highlight in my address last night rather, was to try and look at the issue of graduate unemployment as a crisis, and specifically for us as a university.
Having said that, I don't think it's just the Walter Sisulu University that is looking at graduate unemployment as a crisis. A lot of universities are facing similar problems. There's a lot of graduates that are unemployed. But, let's pick his brain and let's hear what he has to say with regards to this particular issue.
Universities like UCT or WITS would have an average of anything between 9 months to a year between the date that the graduate graduates, you get your degree, and the date you get your first job. But what we find is that with our graduates, that a period could go up to 3 years. And sometimes it can even exceed 3 years.
This is true. You find a lot of graduates, people with qualifications. You see them on LinkedIn all the time, that are unemployed for long periods of time. Now we can't, say it's one thing that causes this, right? Because you've got students that I saw the other day that was a qualified, had a diploma in mechanical engineering, I think, and he was struggling to find work. So we can't blame the qualification only, but in most cases, believe you me, it's causes that there's an oversupply of with very little demand.
So the question was, how do we understand this? How do we examine this? What are the causes and what are the reasons? So what we looked at was, we graduate, firstly, we enroll approximately 30,000 students every year. We graduate about 6,000 to 7,000 every year. And the majority of those are diplomas and certificates. And that's where the problem really is. It's in the nature of the certificates and in the nature of the diplomas. And that's where we find that there is a high proportion of graduates that are unable to secure employment in the formal market.
I think that this is really important for my younger audience. Is saying that most of people that are struggling to get jobs as graduates are people that studied for diplomas and certificates. And this goes back to my point of saying it's not wrong to upgrade your results so that you qualify for a degree. Now, it's not wrong to study for a diploma, don't get me wrong, especially if you will continue learning beyond that certificate or beyond that diploma. It's not wrong to go and study for a diploma. But Advocate Ngcukaitobi is saying here that the people that struggle most to get employment are those that studied for specific diplomas and certificates. Let's listen and hear what those are.
So there are two problems with it. The one is an external problem and the other is an internal problem. There's very little we can do about the external problem, but we can try and resolve the endogenous problem. And what are these problems? Two of them. One problem is, what are the graduates studying? What we have found is that over the years, Walter Sisulu University has been a conglomeration of 3 different universities. But each university tended to focus on educating graduates for the public service. So focusing on diplomas like public administration or public management.
And guys, I'm just going to continue this video so that we can hear coherently what it says. And I'll also leave a link in the description below. But if you are in high school or if you're considering going to university, please be careful of the qualification that you choose. The employment in this country is created mostly by the private sector. It's business people, it's small businesses that hire graduates. So if you are going to study for any qualification, consider that, it needs to serve, it needs to have a use in the private sector. Companies need to have a use for that particular qualification that you're studying for. So if you are going to study in the public sector, public management and governance, and these courses that relate mostly to the public sector, you will struggle to find employment. So you need to be careful how you choose what you want to study. And there's a point that I also want to make. A lot of students neglect TVET colleges. A lot of students neglect skills like practical skills, like skills in the artisan space. There's a lot of guys that are gifted with using their hands. Study towards those qualifications, because there's an advantage to studying towards those qualifications. In my opinion, if you have a diploma in carpentry, for example, you cannot go wrong, because you can manufacture furniture and find people like me who will help you market that product. So what I'm saying is you can create a product that is marketable. You can create a product that allows you to make money instead of looking for jobs. So studying towards qualifications that make you self-employed or make you independent, I think is very critical. Those are just my thoughts, but let's continue listening to Advocate Ngcukaitobi.
And yet, the public sector has in fact not been employing. For the last 20 years, there have been very, very few jobs in the public sector. And so what we are doing, we are producing graduates whose qualifications are misaligned to what the market is expecting. Now, how can we change this? Because we're not going to change it tomorrow, because we still have thousands of students. One of the solutions actually highlighted by one of my colleagues who sits with me on council, you mentioned his name, Vuyani Jachana, was that we have to think more about what does a graduate actually need. One of them is a basic skill in marketing, is that our graduates are unable to market themselves, and they're also unable to market a product.
Bro, this guy is speaking my language right here. And, I thought that people who are struggling, or graduates that are struggling to market themselves, are those in the creative fields where you need to have a portfolio of work to show to your potential employers. I found that this was a problem in the design and media space, where students were, struggling to market themselves. But I've had a few conversations, some on LinkedIn, some in persons, with advocates, saying that a lot of students are struggling with this particular skill of marketing. And there's a huge gap, there's a huge gap for the private sector in this space to fill. I think that the private sector needs to get into the space, not just the private sector. I think that universities need to work with the private sector to help students learn how to market themselves. This concept of having a portfolio of work, I think it can work not just in the creative spaces like multimedia, like design, video production, and so forth and so on. I think having a portfolio of work and being able to demonstrate that you are able to do what the job you are applying for specifies is really important. I think it's really important. I think the idea of having a portfolio of work across all fields could work. It might be a crazy idea, but one of the advantages that students in the creative fields have is they're able to demonstrate what they can do through a portfolio. So, and as such, a portfolio can market them and what they can do. So I'm liking this idea a lot, that we need to teach our graduates how to market themselves. I'm in love with what he's saying. We need to teach our graduates how to market themselves.
And yet, the art of selling something has been central to a functioning economy for hundreds and hundreds of years. So you could tweak the program simply by introducing a marketing program for 6 months, a marketing certificate for a year. And so that's one of the things we're beginning to think about in relation to how do we empower our graduates.
And, on what he's saying here, that they're thinking of introducing marketing certificates or marketing courses, I think it's a brilliant idea. But what I've found with universities and colleges is they tend to hire their very own students. And you may find that their student does not have the real world experience. And so I think this is where the private sector and the public sector, like universities, need to come together. I think universities need to allow people that are practicing in these areas to teach in their campuses, or they need to partner with the private sector. Imagine the Walter Sisulu University and many other universities partnering with a marketing firm and putting together a short course for students so that they get the skills that are relevant currently, instead of them hiring a former student who may not have the industry ins and out. Working with a private firm or a company in the private sector that specializes in the field of marketing can do wonders for students, because they'll be getting knowledge that is applicable today. They won't be getting outdated knowledge. I love what he's saying. I think it's really important that we think about this.
Another concern is communication skills. This is a basic skill that every graduate ought to master. You've got to be able to communicate in a language and communicate in a way that persuades the person who's listening to you. Whether you're going to use Xhosa or English, but you've got to have a language that you master. What we find is that the communication skills of our graduates, they may be good in the technical areas of the subjects that they are studying, but the soft communication skills are lacking. So we're thinking about introducing basic marketing skills, basic communication skills that immediately change the direction of the graduate.
Man, I think that universities really need to implement what he's saying. Communication skills are very important. Being able to convince, right? That's a part of marketing. Like, you need to sell. You need to sell yourself. And if you can sell yourself as a graduate, the chances of you needing a job will be slim. Being able to communicate and being able to market yourself allows you to be self-employed. So I think that marketing and communication, these are skills that universities really need to focus on in order for graduates to be marketable, to be fit for the job market. And I am pushing a lot for the private sector and these higher institutions or the public sector to work together to put programs in place to improve the curriculum of universities. Because if we are being honest, most of the curriculums of our universities are outdated. Students are getting outdated information, not only in the multimedia space, but now I'm learning that in the law space and in the accounting space. So in order for the curricula or the curriculum to be updated to fit current times, there needs to be a partnership between the private sector and the public sector. But yeah, communication and marketing, I like what he's saying. These needs to be introduced, not just in the Walter Sisulu University, but in universities across the country.
Does the debt, because we're talking about over R1 billion in debt for many of the graduates that have their certificates or their degrees and diplomas held by the university, does that play any bearing given that they can't actually apply for employment given that they owe so much? And this comes from a university, of course, that caters in large for the poorest of the poor.
Yes, I mean, you're right. We cater for people that are simply financially unable to access the universities like Cape Town, Wits, Stellenbosch and Pretoria for financial reasons. They simply are unable to go there. And so they come to us either as a second or third or sometimes last resort. And sometimes they apply only at the end of February. So that's the pool that we're servicing. And primarily they are located in the Eastern Cape. So when you describe them as the poorest of the poor, it's actually an apt description. Now, until NSFAS became fully 100% grant-based, and when it was still a loan, we generated the problem of student debt. Yes, it's true. Yesterday, the announcement that was made was that it's in excess of R1 billion. When we've looked at that number, actually, it could be slightly less. It's probably about 700, 800 million. That's student debt that we are unable to recover immediately.
If you are living in South Africa there is now no excuse not to get an education. If you so wish, if you want to get an education and you're living in South Africa, there's opportunities. NSFAS is now fully grant-based, which is good news for a whole lot of young people in South Africa. So this is one of the reasons that even though our country has a lot of mistakes and there's a lot of corruption, they are prioritizing education. And I think that this is an opportunity that all young people in the country need to take. If you qualify for NSFAS, go and apply and get yourself a qualification. The qualification may be outdated, but it's going to be much better than having nothing at all. Guys, this is my parting shot with regard to addressing the graduate unemployment crisis in South Africa. I think it's very important for us to be lifelong learners. Just because you have a qualification does not mean you stop learning. Adding to your arsenal is going to be very important. Now, imagine you are a PR student. I've actually been working with a PR graduate this year. And over the course of the year, she's added video editing to a skill set. And she now wants to learn web development, WordPress web development, which is really, really simple. I think that's the mindset that we need to have, right? You can go to university and get your qualification, but we need to have this mentality of lifelong learning. Just because you have a qualification, especially for guys that studied for qualifications that serve the public sector, the chances of you getting a job in the public sector are very small, but the chances of you getting a job in the private sector are bigger, but you need to add to your arsenal. So depending on the field in the private sector that you want to go into, familiarize yourself with the demands of that job and make yourself useful by adding skills that will make you dangerous, that will make you more employable. So we need to learn beyond the qualifications that we obtain in university. If we want to end this graduate unemployment crisis, our students need to keep upskilling themselves. But the cure for me is entrepreneurship. We need students that will go and study courses that allow them to be entrepreneurs. If you can go and study a course that allows you to be an entrepreneur, either you can make a product and sell it, or you can even productize skills and sell them in the form of online courses. Guys, this is going to be a long video because I have a lot of thoughts on this particular topic. But the key for me is we need to be lifelong learners and we need to study for programs, firstly, where the demand is high and there's less competition. And lastly, we need to study qualifications that allow us to start businesses so that we are not too dependent on the private sector, the public sector, whatever sector. We can just start our own businesses and make a difference in our lives in that manner. Thank you guys for joining me. If you love this type of content, be sure to subscribe because I have plenty of this coming your way. Thank you for joining me once again. God willing, I'll definitely see you on the next one. Cheers for now.